I just was somebody that have this insatiable curiosity for things, much to my husband's chagrin. I am constantly asking, what else, why, where else could we step more fully into something? So I'm somebody that just I've never hung back and coasted. I just never, ever, ever did that. And I also really harnessed pain and loss in my life and put it forward as, what is this going to teach me? And then also, how can I be in service with this wisdom to other people? So I think this is like natural curiosity and energy about me, and matching it to this desire to help people.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation.
Next guest has such powerful intuition and the ability to uncover and elevate the gifts of others. I know that's been my experience. With over 25 years of business experience, she's an expert in the area of executive performance, relationship building, and team empowerment. And she continues her work to support the transformation of men and women in the workplace through a weekly YouTube show, an Apple podcast called Warriors at Work. In fact, her ultimate vision is to create a band of warriors in the workplace who are ready to go from predictable to the potent. Our guest is Jeannie Coomber. Welcome, Jeannie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you both.
Always a great conversation with you. Well, there's a few more things I want to tell the audience. So as a world-class executive coach, Jeannie's mission is really to unleash the greater consciousness and joy in others that's only possible through the act of what she describes as stirring and releasing your inner wisdom and to become the master of your own life, which I guess is a great title for Jeannie then is Chief Empowerment Officer. So whether she's interviewing a CEO or a subject matter expert, speaking at a conference or facilitating panel discussions, or coaching executives, Jeannie is known for being contemplative, captivating, and direct, which we love. It's kind of a high bar already, Jeannie. So let's jump into
Looking
this.
around like, who are you talking about?
Right. So we love to start these conversations out talking about journey. This year, our theme for the Women's Forum, as you know, was designing and living your brilliant life. I think when I think about your journey, your path has been anything but linear. So what has been that inspiration for you for your path, and how have you decided to move down that path and where to shine your light for yourself and for others?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is I never just rested on my laurels. I'm somebody I'm very self-made. That's my mentality. Everything I have, I've created. I also got certified before it was a sexy thing. So I've been coaching for about 17 years and left a very successful career in financial services, ran an account management function. And I just was somebody that have this insatiable curiosity for things, much to my husband's chagrin. I am constantly asking, what else, why, where else could we step more fully into something? So I'm somebody that just I've never hung back and coasted. I just never, ever, ever did that. And I also really harnessed pain and loss in my life and put it forward as, what is this going to teach me? And then also, how can I be in service with this wisdom to other people? So I think this is like natural curiosity and energy about me, and matching it to this desire to help people. I get such a thrill when I leave a conversation and I've helped somebody move the needle on a decision or step more fully into something or overcome an a moment of self-doubt or self-critic, like I get such a thrill. I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do while I'm on this planet, is ignite that in other people.
I love that. And I love what you had said, that coaching is what you like about it is that it's forward thinking. I never really thought of it that way, but that is really exciting about what you can help create going forward.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I was attracted to coaching versus my mother was a psychotherapist, and she was like, "Jeannie, just go back, get your MSW. We'll go into practice together." I was like, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder around where I've come from. I want to work with people that are looking ahead
Mm.
and where they want to go, and how can I play a part in helping people really identify what makes you so powerful and unique in the world, and how do we position you for things. And that's really the essence of what a coach is, and that's certainly my whole MO in doing what I do.
It sounds like something that's resonating with me is that you live outside your comfort zone, and that's where you're most comfortable, and that you help others push through their complacency and their own comfort. Is that accurate?
Yes, and that is you have to be careful walking that sometimes.
Right.
But I'm somebody who hates roller coasters. However, I'm somebody from a professional development standpoint. I'm always thinking, where else have I not gone?
Right.
What else is there for me in my journey, in my life? I'm incredibly conscious to how I show up in my life every day. And so that when I'm in a coaching conversation, I bring that same sense of consciousness into conversations, and not just look at it through the lens of, here's your role, here's where you want to get promoted, here's how much more money you
Mm.
want to bring into your business, here's how you're going to lead an organization globally. All of that's important. However, you got to do the inside work to do the outside work. And so I really bring a lot of that consciousness conversation into, whether it's interviewing people or doing one-on-one coaching or any kind of group dynamics. I am unapologetic about asking the deeper questions around what makes you who you are.
And I think
So
that's so
cool.
important because a lot of times people don't know the questions. They don't know to be prompted in a certain direction. So having that kind of support like you offer, I think is priceless.
It's also giving you permission to be human.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you both have seen this numerous times in your career in running a really successful organization. When you take pause and you ask the deeper self-reflective questions, there's always tremendous meaning and worth and value that comes from that. But you have to have the courage to go in and then
Yeah.
do something and action something from that externally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm
Yeah,
going to pick up
agree.
on the word courage that you had just mentioned. And I'm curious about what inspires you, and I'll call you Chief
Mm.
Warrior Officer, to push past the boundaries and be more of who you can be and to serve others.
It has been a work in progress. If you'd seen me earlier in my career, I was very indexed towards competence and being smart and savvy and good decision maker and making sure that my visibility and my brand all fit those things. But that's very externally focused. What I've learned in my life, and a lot of it came from, again, a lot of loss and grief and difficult times, I started to trust more of my internal barometer. And when I was trusting more of my intuition and my internal barometer and matching it to my curiosity and my cognitive skills, I started to have more success and more flow and more ease. And then I was like, oh, that's really what courage means to me. It's like I'm playing with the edges of my own narrative. And I'm not necessarily looking at my life through the lens of what everyone else wants from me, which of course that's important, especially if they love you and they support you. But what is it I want? How can I bring something forward, again, in that service mentality? I'm a big fan of sharing the wounds.
Hmm.
and sharing the wounds for the sake of helping someone else. Not sharing the wounds like, "Oh, look at my stripes." Which again, some people would do that and there's no judgment there. That's you. But for me, I believe that it provides people an opportunity to explore their own humanity. And that's what makes you powerful and unique in the world.
Yeah, I love that. You know, Nancy and I talk about this all the time, and not to be a victim of an environment, but don't you think some of your experience was you were in a very dominant culture that ultimately just really didn't resonate with you, and you had to manage your exterior and have
Yes.
that veneer and not allow that shell to be cracked? And maybe it's having the courage to all of a sudden go, wait a minute, this is not me. This is not how I want to be seen and live. And this is not aligned with what I believe I'm
Yeah.
here to do.
Yes, that is so right on. And I think a lot of it, that's the beautiful thing about getting older. You have a lot
Yes.
more wisdom and a lot more willingness to say, I don't want to do that. But when I made a choice to leave the corporate role that I was in, it was an epiphany. I was on my way to Newark Airport. I was traveling a ton. I couldn't remember if I was going to San Diego or Atlanta. And I was like, I've completely lost myself in a job that I
Mm.
didn't really care about. I didn't care about a lot of the things that were happening on a daily basis. So I started to just ask myself the bigger questions and say, is this really what I want to do with my life? Is that am I showing up in the best possible way? No. Am I providing, a good financial living for my family, which I didn't even have any children at the time? I was like, well, yes, but I've never been one of those people that looks at that as the only success meter. It's much more around, how am I feeling? Do I have joy? Am I happy here? And if I were to make a shift, how would I do that? And by the way, at that same moment, my husband was in chiropractic school, reschooling as a chiropractor in this country. He was an osteopath in England. We had no money. I was taken from Paul to pay Peter. We had nothing. I almost had no business to be asking myself these questions, but I felt like this big empty hole in my heart. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've got to figure out how to make some changes here. And I knew and had found out a little bit about coaching, but it was uncharted waters. It was not even
Mhm.
well known in the US at that point. And when I did decide to leave, everyone thought I was out of my mind. What are you doing? Why would you do this now? And I just knew my capabilities. And I can't tell you how many times I must have said to my husband, you just got to trust me. I know we don't have any money right now, but you got to trust me. It's
Hmm.
going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Wow. Yeah,
Would
so that takes courage, to Nancy's point,
yeah.
when she
Yeah.
mentioned courage. So how do you then, as a coach, how do you help others try to maintain that authenticity, to be vulnerable to go inside and to step into that power, and to choose a more fulfilling a life that might be more purposeful and more aligned with their values?
Yeah, and also a work in progress, right? When you're first getting certified and you're doing coaching work, you're taught frameworks and how you approach certain things and how you bring in other modalities. And it doesn't say that I don't do that, but what I to do now is when I'm first engaging someone, and I do this also when I'm considering interviewing somebody. You both know this, right? When you're first before someone else, I ask the deeper questions. And one of the most powerful questions to ask is, regardless of their role, regardless of their scope, I'll ask, are you happy? I would
Mm.
say 50% of the time, if they cry, I know
Hmm.
we're about to have a really
Hmm.
deep conversation.
Hmm.
And I will get a lot of answers, especially for more senior people that have a very large scope of responsibility, both personally and professionally. That is a very scary word because we've been conditioned to believe and behave in a certain way based upon whatever life we've created. So being happy isn't necessarily a priority. It's more
Mm.
like, I'm providing, I have
Right.
some satisfaction. I have tremendous
Right.
acumen and accomplishment. Again, there is nothing wrong with that. However, if someone is reaching out to me and they want to have a bigger conversation about their true purpose, mission, and capabilities in the world, being happy and having a relationship to happiness and joy is very important to that process. And it also helps me to discern, is this a coaching engagement where I can have some success? Because if I'm just there more transactionally to move the needle on a promotion and stepping more fully into a role, I'll know that very early on. And I might say, you know what, that's not the right kind of coaching for this person. Let me give you somebody
Mm.
who might be a better fit.
Mhm.
But if they're willing to explore the bigger questions around their humanity and why they're here and what they're doing and how that definitely relates to how they show up in their career and running their organizations, then I know we're in it. And I think the pandemic gave us permission to play in that space much more
Yeah.
deliberately than we gave ourselves permission to do pre-COVID, because obviously we were dealing with a significant life event that affected all of us and challenged us personally, professionally, emotionally, in ways that we've never ever been pushed before. So I feel like there's more permission to talk very openly. I mean, I use words like are you an intuitive person? How do you know? Give me some examples of that. Um, Asking the easier questions would be, so give me some examples of when you've had key accomplishments. How'd you feel? People can fire that off. But when you
Mm.
start asking, well, tell me about a time where you sensed and felt your way through an interaction, and how did you listen to your intuition? You were making those decisions or you're making recommendations. That's a very different conversation. And there's a lot of places you could go with that.
It's interesting as you were just talking about that and about, the our happiness and stuff and all the business acumen, the power and the wealth and, building your, finances and all these accomplishments. That's external. But I think about, the internal, the soul. And I appreciate when you say that asking, are you happy? It, can strike a chord with many people, especially those in the C-suite, because I think for me that also speaks about your soul,
Mm.
and gets into the depths of that aspect and that level of happiness.
Yeah, and soul can be a very scary question
Totally, totally.
to
I
a
would.
business person. However, we know the more you're willing to ask those types of the calling questions,
Mm,
like when you feel your way through a decision or you feel resistance to a decision, but you're doing it anyway for the sake of whatever intellectual decision making skill that you also have a responsibility to do, that tension's a powerful conversation. And it wouldn't it be an incredible world if we could use soul and strategy in like the same sentence,
Hmm.
or we could use intellect and intuition in the same sentence, because it's very present, but it's not something that we speak about very openly. But that's the kind of world I'm trying to create, is like
Mm.
as we're making decisions, as we're running organizations, as we're living our lives. That to me is the real power that's available to us. But it's a choice. You have to consciously make a choice that you're willing to do that level of work, cuz we know it's not always easy, right? But we're all in the same transformational space. We're
mhm,
looking
mhm.
to expand our capacity in the world and affect more people's lives in a really positive way. And if you're willing to do the work, that's going to add more fuel to that transformational space.
Yeah, I totally
Absolutely.
agree with that. And I'm curious, something that is kind of in my mind right now is the term servant leader, which is something I associate with you. And I'm curious, you are so accomplished in so many ways. What are some of your biggest challenges, Jeannie?
Mm. Boy, there's a laundry list for that one. The biggest one I struggle with, this is an everyday thing. I am not patient. I I'm not patient more with myself than I'm impatient with everyone else. I'm in the listening business, so I have to create a lot of
Mm.
space and time to hear people's soul stories and to really understand where they're coming from. So that's not where my lack of patience shows up. My lack of patience shows up for myself. Have I done enough? Have I
Hmm.
helped enough people? When is my house going to be finished? Um, and it also shows up because it makes me sometimes have unrealistic expectations for things. I will start, for example, I start 2022. I do this every year. I do a whole vision boarding thing. And the big questions I ask, I have all these things I'm going to accomplish and do. And then if I get to March and I haven't knocked off 50% of it, I'm like, "Ah,
The
I don't,
year's almost over.
what
Seriously?
am I doing? Tick tock, tick tock. Let's get this going." And I'm like, but wait a second. I'm spending all day helping people to really just see where you made progress here. How are you feeling? How are you stepping more into this? What are some of your choices now? What is your thinking now? What is your decision now? So this is a lifetime battle where I'm constantly having to apply this amazing wisdom and advice I'm giving other people and put it back in my own space. But
Mm.
patience and unrealistic expectations is a lifelong challenge.
Yeah, I share that expectation challenge. I was working with a coach, and we came up with the phrase. It's not the post-it note fell off. I had to put another one up, but saying "I am enough."
Mhm.
Instead of just focusing on what I haven't done yet versus the accomplishments. To give yourself some grace since you're giving it away to others, right?
You just reminded me of something that I learned along the way from a therapist. So I have a very loud inner critic, as we all probably have our own little inner critics. I actually named her. Her name's Alexis, and I brought it up. I have a lot of therapist friends, and I had a long conversation with her one night, and I said, "God, this inner critic, she's so loud, and she shows up at the most inopportune time." And I keep trying to like get her out of the equation, get her out of the conversation. She goes, "Well, you're doing it all wrong, Jeannie. Everybody's got an inner critic." "How old is she?" I said, "Nah, she's probably like 8 to 10 years old." But she's always like, "That don't
Mm.
say that. That's gonna sound stupid. That's not gonna land right. Oh, did you just oh no. A lot of that stuff." And she said, "Well, hold on a second. That inner critic is designed to actually protect you. So I'm gonna reframe it for you. Don't throw her out, acknowledge her. Acknowledge her contributions to say, I know, little Alexis, you're here to help me, but I'm the adult. I'm in charge. I got this." And so that also is something I am in constant dialogue with my inner critic. Whenever I do anything where I'm trying to play bigger or I'm trying to be quiet instead of offering advice or anytime I'm trying to shift or challenge myself, she shows up.
Hmm.
So I've been doing that as I just have a lot of dialogue with her saying, I got this. I thank you. I know you love me. And I know that's why you're trying to help me edit myself. But I need to either have this experience or I'm okay. I got it. Thank you." And so she helped me to make peace with her. But she showed up yesterday for something that I was doing right before I was about to do this really, really large event. I was in my office, as I always do, like 5 minutes before I get into like a quiet space. And I was like, "Oh, she's there. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't forget to do I did that. I got it. I'm okay." So that's
Yeah,
another thing I always struggle with.
works in progress, right?
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
let's go
We all
back
are.
to your superpowers. I think it's a good shift, right?
Okay.
So I think intuition has to be one. What are some of your other like top superpowers, do you feel?
I was called a professional truth teller once, and I loved it.
Mm.
I was like, "Yeah." So that and, called me compassionately confrontational. And I was like at
Yeah,
first
that's good.
I was like,
That's
"Wait,
great.
oh, that's actually pretty good." But, my superpower is my ability to combine those 2 things. So I'm a sensor and a feeler. I can pick up very quickly what's going on underneath the surface. So my intuitive skills are really, really sharp. And I use that with my cognitive skills to frame things for people so they can hear the truth. And
Mm.
sometimes they don't want to hear it, and sometimes it's painful, but I do it in a way that is respectful and loving, but I tell the truth, and I that has gotten me in some hot water before. And I'm at a place now in my life, particularly when I'm working and I'm contracted by large organizations. I need to be honest and tell the truth. And I'm okay with that now. As long as I'm conscious that I'm in my integrity, it's in
Mhm.
service,
Mhm.
Right.
and I'm
Right.
doing it in a compassionate and loving way, I'm okay with that.
Right.
And
Especially when you're just trying to be a resource and supportive. The truth telling is really a message that you feel will help them move forward in a more
right.
meaningful way, right?
Yes, and often I would call out something that, politically they can't call out, or they've had some fear about naming. And I've a lot of my success is because they know they're going to get somebody that I'm not going to just, okay, I'll
Sugarcoat
do it
it.
the way
Right.
else. No, we're going to work together and make sure that we're uncovering. And I got more courage around that when I had some tough coaching engagements where I was brought in and they weren't honest with me around the expectations. So I
Mhm.
uncovered some things that were not honest and not in my integrity or the firm's integrity, and I let myself go from the job and said I'm not the person for this. And it wasn't good for them as an organization. It wasn't good for me, but it got me to really get clear around, why is someone hiring me? What is it you really want to have happen? And this is who I am. This is how I'm going to approach this. Does that work for you? And sometimes it's a no. And I have to be okay with that.
Right.
But I'm always very conscious of, I got to be me, and this is my path, this is my gifts. And if we're really going to get people to open up and go down the soul story path, I have to represent that in the best possible way. So I had to get really comfortable with that, and that took some courage.
Hmm. That's interesting. And I'm thinking about what you mentioned a moment ago, that sometimes you deliver messages that are, really hard for people to hear, but they come from a deep sense of caring and compassion and truth. And I'm curious about, do most people take time, like, you know, uh, to digest that when it lands, or is it just, do you find that many of the people that you coach are like, oh, yeah, I
Mm.
see that.
Most people are not surprised.
Mm,
They they knew it was there,
mm,
because it's often something relating to their leadership style, decision making, or how they're doing what they're doing that's disruptive or that needs some adjustment. It's rare. I mean, I can count on one hand in 17 years how many people that were like, "What is this?" I had one
right.
person punch the desk. One
Oh,
person.
wow.
Generally, people are like, "Yeah, I knew that was there. Yeah."
Hmm.
And what I do, and any coach will do this, is you're helping them figure out, what do we do with this now? What does this really mean? And how do we capitalize on your genius
Right.
so that this
Right.
is less problematic,
Right.
but that you have
Right.
consciousness into it. It's not like a fix, because sometimes it's very much who you are. And like, how do I move some of these behaviors based upon these conditions? But like, let's dial up when you're at your best, because if you can lock into that, this is going to be less of a problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So, so talking about dialing up, I'm going to take the opposite of that. So
Oh,
you give so much of yourself through, your coaching, your podcast, your warrior community, and of course here to us at the Women's Forum community. How do you bring it down for yourself? How do you practice self-care, and what
mm.
brings Jeannie joy?
Well, here's something that always shocks people when I say this. I'm actually introverted. I have.
Really?
I
Oh
am.
my God. Sorry.
I know, right? But
Not sure I buy it.
I have a lot of extroverted attributes, but I am somebody who I have to have quiet, and I have to have quiet before I'm doing anything big, but also a lot of decompression time. So like when we finish here, I won't talk for about 30 minutes. I won't do any electronic. I will literally just sit quietly and let whatever marinate. So that's something I recognized about myself about 7 years ago when I was doing a lot of traveling and I was doing these large group sessions and I couldn't figure out while I was so exhausted. I mean, like exhausted on a deep level. Plus, I have this ability to sense where people are. So sometimes I'd be taking on their energy and their stuff, and I couldn't figure it out. So I found that out about myself. So that's the first thing is I'm very conscious to my energy level. The second thing, I'm a big journaler every day. Don't miss it. I sit with a book and my coffee, and whatever comes up, comes up. And I have a particular practice that I do in there where I'm very conscious of things that I've accomplished, things I'm grateful for, but things that I've also want to create for my life, for my children, for my husband, for my friends, anything that's top of mind for me. And then the third thing is I I have brought some people into my community, my personal community to help me with my physical, which is I have a functional doctor that I work with. So I'm on about 10 or 11 different supplements on a daily basis. So I do blood work with her every 6 months. I also just recently brought in, I'll call him a spirituality coach.
Hmm.
So we have big spiritual what if, why conversations. It's fascinating. He's a Buddhist. Fascinating to talk to somebody who
Mm.
has that lens. And then the other thing that I do is I ask for help. And this is probably something that should have gone on my challenges list. I'm not great at raising my hand to say I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, I don't know what to do. I was raised in a family where I had to be my mom called it counter dependent, where she thought I think she was raising us to be independent, but what ended up happening is a very difficult time asking people to help me
Mm.
or acknowledging that I might not be in a great place. So now I've gotten more comfortable with that. And those things keep me aware of my energy level, where my head is, where my heart is, what I can be for other people versus what I need to be for myself. And, I shared with both of you, and I don't mind talking about this, is a couple of months ago, I called a timeout on my
Mm.
life. And I have never in 17 years canceled a business trip because I wasn't feeling mentally and physically strong. And I did that and I had to. I was beyond fatigued. I was beyond anything that I'd ever experienced in my life, but I had to have the courage to say, I'm not okay. I'm going to be okay, but I need to take some time away from my life for a couple of days and have a very understanding husband and family. And then I had to come back and make adjustments to my life, recognizing that my energy was going to take a while to come back.
Mm.
And then maybe I wasn't going to come back as I was pre all of this.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and that's still a work in progress. I'm
Mhm.
certainly not, I think, at the energy level that I was at before, but I've also made some changes. But self care is a non negotiable to me now. I like simple things like I'll lay down in here, like grab a pillow, I'll take 10-15 minutes. I would never do that before. Definitely am
Right.
a big
Right.
walker, a nurture person, nature person, but all of
Good for
that's
you.
my self care.
Yeah, well,
Great.
we all deserve that. And it's all just investing in ourselves so we can even be more uh, to others and ourselves, right? So,
But
Mm.
Jeannie, before we wrap it up, we're always curious. So what's next for you?
The question that I'm sitting with is I want to bring this Warriors at Work conversation, everything we're talking about here right now, to as many people as I possibly can. So, in what format should that
Mm.
take?
Mhm.
Is it smaller, digestible things? Is it a broader audience? Is it a broader stage? And can I really help people on that level make
mm,
changes to their soul and their life story and their careers. And can I do it with the love and the humor and this compassionate, confrontational style mixed with truth telling and be in service on that level? And so that's the place that I'm playing in, is where I am now, where I want to go. What does that gap really look like? And who are the people that are going to help get me wherever that is? Because there's a lot of ideas out there on what that is. And how can we create an environment where we all succeed, we're all happy, we're all fulfilled, and bringing people into that journey that believe in that philosophy. And so far, very good.
That's
Great.
great.
Well, we love your videos, the engagement you have. You have a real consistent message and flow, and we so enjoy being part of it. And we can't wait to make sure that we share some of those links with our audience as well. So thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Barbara and Nancy, for asking me such incredible questions where I get to reveal a little bit more about my style and heart, but it also tells me so much about the incredible work you're putting out into the world. So thank you for all that you're doing every day.